Have you ever felt like life keeps repeating the same painful patterns, no matter how hard you try to change? And what if I told you that this endless cycle isn't random, but a message, a divine sign you've been ignoring for far too long? One that holds the power to completely shift your reality if you choose to listen today. What if that unsettling feeling in your chest, the delay in your blessing, the recurring battles, the silence in your prayers, what if all of that has been heaven's way of trying to get your attention? There's a reason your spirit has been restless. There's a reason that, even surrounded by people, you've felt like no one truly sees what you're going through. And it's not because God is absent. It's because He's been speaking, constantly, clearly, but maybe not in the way you expected. Most people miss it, not because they're blind, but because they're distracted, pulled by routines, drowned in noise, and overwhelmed by burdens they were never meant to carry alone. But what if there's a code, a spiritual pattern hidden in plain sight, a message disguised in your waiting, your pain, your repetition? A message you were supposed to receive, but that you've subconsciously avoided because you thought it was just life. There's something profound we often forget. God doesn't always shout, and sometimes He repeats. And repetition is not neglect, it's mercy. It's God circling back, giving you another chance to pay attention, to see, to understand. And today, in this very moment, something in your spirit already knows. This is not just another video. Something divine brought you here. You didn't click by chance. You're here because there's something in this message for you, not for someone else, not for tomorrow, for now. Today's word is going to reveal a truth you may have overlooked your entire life. And once it's revealed, you won't be able to unsee it. And that could change everything, that restless feeling. It will finally make sense. The delays, the doubts, the dreams, all of it will come together like pieces of a puzzle. But you have to stay with me, because at some point in this message, something will click. And when it does, it'll be like the veil lifts and your spirit breathes again. But before we begin this journey, I want you to take one bold step of faith. Type in the comments right now. Peace in Christ. Yes, right now. That's more than just a phrase, and sir, it's a declaration, a signal to heaven that you're present, that you're open, and that you're listening. When you write it, you're claiming your seat at the table of revelation today. And if this message resonates even 1% with your heart, I ask you to like this video, not for me, but because when you do, you're pushing this message out to others who are desperate for a word from God, but haven't found it yet. You're part of this mission. You're spreading light in the middle of someone else's darkness. And if you've already done that, I want to honor you. Truly, you're not just watching, you're participating. You're standing in the gap with us. You're helping this word reach people who are silently begging for a sign. And that's powerful. Now take one more step. Subscribe. You have no idea how many souls come here each week because this is the only place they find peace, hope, and clarity. Many of them have no church nearby, no community, no one to pray with. So this space becomes their secret sanctuary. If you believe in the work God is doing here, be part of it fully. Don't just pass through, stay, grow. Be a pillar in this spiritual family. And listen closely. The teaching that comes before the end of this message, the second to last word, might just be the one God will use to open a door you've been praying about for years. Don't miss it. Your obedience in listening all the way through might be the act of faith that unlocks what's next for you. Now breathe, center your heart, because the study begins now. There's a moment in the book of Job that most people overlook, a moment that doesn't involve thunder from heaven or divine fire, but something far more subtle. In Job 33:14, we read, "For God does speak, now one way, now another, though no one perceives it." Did you catch that? God does speak constantly. The problem is never His silence, it's our perception. You see, Job was a man drowning in unanswered questions. He had lost everything: his wealth, his children, his health. His friends tried to explain it. His own heart wrestled with confusion. But the truth was simple and terrifying. God had been speaking all along, just not in the language Job was expecting. How often do we fall into that same trap, waiting for dreams, signs, voices, open heavens, while missing the whisper in our daily patterns, the voice in repetition, the gentle press on our conscience when we repeat the same mistakes? Sometimes God doesn't bring thunder, He brings silence, the kind that forces us to finally look within. Maybe you've been waiting for a divine moment, something dramatic, something undeniable. But what if that delay is the sign? What if the very thing you're calling stagnation is the holy ground where God is teaching you to truly hear? Let's go deeper. The context of Job's suffering wasn't just about testing, it was about divine alignment. God was using loss to rewire how Job listened. Before the pain, Job knew about God. After the pain, he heard Him. Do you understand how powerful that shift is? There's a kind of listening that only happens after your plans fail. A kind of clarity that only comes when the noise of the world dies down, and all that's left is the echo of your soul and the presence of a God who's never left your side. If you feel like you've been repeating the same battles, same mistakes, same waiting seasons, don't brush it off as failure. That might be your Elihu moment, the moment where God is speaking in one way, now another, but you haven't perceived it yet. So here's the question you must wrestle with. What have you been calling silence that might actually be strategy? This moment, right now, could be your turning point. If you choose to look at your situation with different eyes. We've been trained to expect God in the spectacular, but He's a master of the subtle, a master of layering meaning into what looks like mundane. That repeated struggle you keep facing, it's not random, it's rhythmic, it's patterned, and that pattern might be the map. Pause for a second and think, what if every delay, every door that closed, every person who left, every time you almost got there but didn't, what if all of that was synchronized communication? What if God's been broadcasting in a frequency only obedience can decode? You're not just in a storm, you're in a classroom, and repetition is His way of getting you to finally ask, Lord, what are you trying to show me? Don't brush this off. Sit with it, reflect. Because once you understand that God speaks through patterns, you'll never see waiting the same way again. Let's continue. In 1 Kings 19, Elijah is running, not from enemies on the battlefield, but from fear, exhaustion, and disappointment. After calling down fire from heaven and defeating the prophets of Baal, a moment of glorious spiritual victory, he finds himself alone, afraid, and asking God to take his life. It's in that dark cave, not on the mountain of triumph, where God chooses to speak again. But how? Not through the mighty wind that tore through the mountains, not through the earthquake that shattered the rocks, not through the fire, no, it was in the gentle whisper. Let that sink in. God bypassed the dramatic and chose the intimate. A whisper doesn't shout to get your attention. It assumes you're close enough to hear, and that's the point. God wants you near. He doesn't want to impress you. He wants to draw you in. How many times have we demanded signs, begged for proof, looked for something loud and undeniable while ignoring the quiet nudge inside, the whisper that only faith can catch? God spoke to Elijah's soul, not his surroundings. Because sometimes the biggest sign isn't something that happens around you. It's what shifts within you. So ask yourself, have you been searching for fire when God is speaking in the silence? When you start paying attention to your inner life, your convictions, your dreams, your sudden discomfort with things that used to feel normal, you begin to notice the holy whisper guiding your every step. That discomfort, that sudden clarity, that restlessness that won't let you settle for less anymore, these are whispers from heaven, echoing louder than thunder. Elijah felt abandoned even after his greatest spiritual victory. And yet God didn't rebuke him. He fed him, let him rest, then whispered his next instruction. That's how God treats you too, with care, with precision, with love. He knows the exact moment to speak and the exact tone that will reach your heart. Could it be that the reason you're watching this video right now is because you're in that same cave Elijah was? Tired, confused. Maybe you've even thought, what's the point anymore? But the whisper is coming, and it might not be what you expect, not another motivational quote, not another person's opinion, but a soft, divine knowing that settles into your heart and won't let you go. A whisper that says, you are not finished, you are not alone, you are being repositioned. Do you feel it now? Because once you recognize the whisper, everything changes. Your prayers shift from why me to show me. Your attitude transforms from I'm stuck to I'm being prepared. And suddenly, even silence becomes sacred. Keep listening. Let's talk about Jonah, a man of God who heard a very clear instruction, go to Nineveh. But instead of obedience, he chose escape. He ran in the opposite direction, boarded a ship, and tried to disappear from the assignment God had placed on his life. But here's the thing, you can't outrun what's written in your spirit. Have you ever noticed that the more you try to avoid something God has placed inside you, the heavier life starts to feel? That unease you carry, the sense that something's missing, the quiet chaos that stirs even in peaceful moments, it's all pointing back to the same thing. There's a calling on your life that you've been ignoring. Jonah thought he was just fleeing a city, but what he was really running from was himself. When the storm hit the boat, the crew panicked. They didn't know why their world was falling apart, but Jonah did. And here's the detail that cuts deep. While the others were fighting to keep the ship afloat, Jonah was sleeping. That's what happens when you numb yourself to God's voice. You fall asleep in the middle of the storm, not because you're at peace, but because you're avoiding the truth. But God didn't abandon Jonah. He allowed the storm. He allowed the fish. He allowed Jonah's descent, not to punish him, but to position him. Some of you right now are inside your own version of the fish, isolated, confused, waiting, and you're wondering if it's all falling apart. But what if this is actually where things start coming together? Because in that dark place, with nowhere left to run, Jonah prayed, and God listened. Your delay hasn't cancelled your calling. Your detour hasn't erased your destiny. The very fact that you're still here, breathing, watching this message, is proof that grace is still chasing you. Jonah was vomited out of the fish onto dry land, and guess what God said? The exact same thing he said at the beginning, go to Nineveh. God didn't change his mind. He just waited until Jonah's heart was ready. Is there something you've been avoiding for too long? A conversation, a calling, a change you know needs to happen. You can try to delay your destiny, but you can't destroy it. The more you resist it, the louder the signs become. Not to scare you, but to wake you up. The storm is not proof that God has left you. It's proof that he's still pursuing you. And when you stop running and start surrendering, you'll realize that everything he's been showing you, all the signs, all the whispers, all the discomfort, they've all been trying to bring you back to your Nineveh, where you belong, where you're needed, where your purpose is waiting. Now let's turn to the story of Balaam, a prophet who knew the voice of God, but allowed his desires to blur his discernment. Balaam was offered wealth, honor, and recognition to curse a people God had already blessed. And even though he knew it was wrong, he kept entertaining the invitation. He kept asking God the same question, hoping for a different answer. Not because he didn't hear God clearly, but because he didn't like what God said. Have you ever been there? You already know what God has said. Deep down, the truth is settled in your heart, but still, You keep negotiating, you ask for confirmation, but it's not clarity you're looking for. It's permission to disobey without consequences. That's where Balaam was. And so God gave him over to his desires, not because he changed his will, but because sometimes God will let you walk down the path you're choosing to show you it's not what you really want. So Balaam saddles his donkey and sets out. But something unusual happens. The donkey, yes, the animal, starts to see what Balaam cannot. An angel stands in the way with a drawn sword, ready to strike, and the donkey stops. Balaam, blinded by his own obsession, begins beating the animal, furious that it's not moving forward, until finally God opens the donkey's mouth and it speaks truth, it exposes Balaam's blindness, it interrupts the madness, and only then does God open Balaam's eyes. Sometimes the sign you're ignoring doesn't come through thunder or visions. Sometimes it comes through the unlikeliest voice, the very thing you're frustrated with, the delay, the obstacle, the person you think is blocking your progress. Maybe the tool God is using to protect you from destruction. So ask yourself, what if the interruption in your life right now is actually divine intervention? What if the silence, the delay, the resistance is God holding you back from walking into something that would destroy you? What if He's using the most unexpected people or situations to shake you awake? It's easy to miss the message when you're consumed by your own ambition. It's easy to dismiss God's warning when you're too focused on your own way. But Balaam's story teaches us something crucial. If you keep pushing past the red flags, the warnings, the divine no, you may eventually find yourself face to face with consequences you weren't ready for. You don't need more signs. You need more surrender. When your desire becomes louder than your discernment, that's when the enemy slips in quietly, not with a roar, but with a whisper that sounds like permission. So if you've been praying for a sign, maybe it's time to stop and ask, have I already received it, but ignored it because it didn't align with what I wanted? Because here's the truth, God still speaks, He still warns, He still sends messengers, even if it's through a donkey. And when you humble your heart, slow your steps, and truly listen, you'll start to see that God's protection doesn't always look like favor. Sometimes it looks like resistance, but even in that resistance, His love is relentless. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to ignore the subtle, quiet whispers of warning when your heart is set on something? Let's look at Samson. A man anointed from birth, chosen by God, marked for greatness, yet brought down not by an army, not by a giant, but by his own refusal to listen. Samson had strength that no man could match. He had a calling that was unmistakable, but he also had a weakness, not just for Delilah, but for ignoring boundaries. God had made the terms of his strength clear, but Samson played with fire, over and over again, flirting with compromise. And isn't that what we do? We know the boundaries. We know what God has whispered in secret places. We know what lines not to cross, but we touch them anyway. We see how close we can get without technically disobeying. Until one day, the line disappears. Samson didn't lose his strength the first time he disobeyed. That's what makes the story so dangerous. There were no immediate consequences, so he kept going, kept ignoring the signs, kept silencing the small voice that was trying to keep him safe. And then came the moment he told Delilah everything. The moment he gave up what was sacred for something that was temporary. The moment he chose desire over destiny. The Bible says something chilling after that. He did not know that the Lord had left him. That's what happens when you ignore the signs for too long. You start thinking you're fine. You start believing that because nothing bad happened yet, nothing ever will. But slowly, silently, your sensitivity to God's voice dulls. Your spiritual eyes go dim. Samson thought he could shake himself free, just like before, but the strength was gone, and the enemy was already waiting. This is the danger of delayed consequences. They trick you into thinking you're still covered when, in reality, you're walking on a floor that's about to collapse. So if you've been feeling a strange resistance in your life lately, if things that once came easily now feel heavy, if there's a restlessness in your spirit that you can't quite explain, maybe it's not just coincidence, maybe it's not just stress, maybe it's a sign, a divine sign that something needs to shift, that you're not as aligned as you think, that God is calling you back before it's too late. You don't have to wait for your strength to fail. You don't have to wait for the enemy to take what's precious. You don't have to learn the hard way. You can stop now, turn now, return now. Because no matter how far you've gone, no matter how many warnings you've ignored, the moment you cry out to Him, with a heart that's real, with surrender that's complete, He hears you. Even in the prison, even in the blindness, even when the crowd is laughing and the chains are tight, and just like Samson, your strength can return, not for your glory, but for God's. So ask yourself, have I been flirting with what I should be fleeing? Have I been dismissing what God has been trying to show me? Because sometimes the enemy doesn't come to steal your life. He comes to steal your sensitivity. And when you lose that, you stop noticing the signs. There was once a king who had everything: wisdom, wealth, peace, and favor from God. His name was Solomon. He asked for wisdom, and the Lord gave it to him without measure. People traveled from distant lands just to hear him speak, to witness the order and splendor of his kingdom. His prayers moved heaven. His offerings brought fire down. God Himself filled the temple Solomon built, but with all his wisdom, he still ignored the signs. He loved foreign women, hundreds of them, and God had warned him clearly and repeatedly not to turn his heart toward them. They will surely turn your heart after their gods, the Lord said. But Solomon loved them anyway. He clung to what was beautiful, not what was right. He allowed himself to be swayed little by little, not all at once, not in a loud rebellion, but in soft, slow compromise. That's how it always starts, not with a shout but with a whisper, and eventually the man who once dedicated the most glorious temple to the one true God was building altars to pagan idols. Think about that. The man who once bowed in holy fear ended up kneeling before false gods. It didn't happen because he was evil. It happened because he stopped paying attention, because he started making excuses, because he ignored what God had already made clear. This is what the enemy does. He doesn't try to take everything in from you all at once. He just tries to shift your direction by 1 degree, just enough for you to say, it's not that bad, just enough to keep you distracted, just enough for your fire to dim without you noticing. And when the consequences finally come, they always feel like they arrived too fast, too strong, but they didn't. They were walking toward you the whole time. You just weren't watching. Solomon's story is not just a warning, it's a mirror, because many of us are walking in his footsteps. We've been given wisdom. We've seen God move in power. We've experienced His presence, His provision, His protection. And yet, we tolerate distractions. We entertain ideas and relationships that pull us off course. We let culture and comfort have the final say instead of God's voice. We say, I'm still in control. But are you? Have you ever considered that your distractions are the very thing the enemy is using to drain your strength? Not all idols look like statues. Some idols are silent routines, hidden thoughts, accepted behaviors. And when God sends the signs, when your spirit starts to feel dry, when your peace starts to leak, when your joy becomes harder to find, do you turn to Him? Or do you keep pressing on, pretending everything's okay? There's a reason you're watching this right now, a reason this message found you today. Because the signs have been there for a while, in your heart, in your silence, in your dreams, in the words you hear when you're alone. And God is saying, return to me before the drift becomes disaster. This isn't about fear, it's about mercy. You are loved enough to be warned. You are chosen enough to be redirected. You are still His, even if you've been far. And the moment you open your heart, even trembling, even unsure, God meets you with open arms. Don't wait until peace becomes a memory. Don't ignore what your soul already knows. There's still time, but time doesn't wait forever. Imagine you're walking through the desert, sun burning your skin, thirst clawing at your throat. You've been wandering for hours, maybe days, and every direction looks the same. There's no shade, no map, just heat, silence, emptiness. Suddenly, in the distance, you spot what looks like water. You run, you drop everything, you fall to your knees. But as your hands touch it, it's sand, a mirage. That's what life becomes when we chase things that promise peace, but can't deliver. That's what happens when we trade God's voice for our own plans. When we start building our lives around dreams and distractions instead of truth and trust. And here's the terrifying part. The most dangerous place to be isn't always where things are falling apart. Sometimes it's where everything looks fine on the outside, but deep down, your soul is dry. You laugh, but it's hollow. You work, but you're tired in ways sleep can't fix. You go through the motions, but the fire is gone. You smile in church, but feel empty at home. And God keeps whispering, keeps nudging, keeps sending signs through a sermon, a dream, a friend, a verse you can't get out of your head. But we often respond like Pharaoh in Exodus. God showed him miracle after miracle, sign after sign. Warnings became plagues, mercy became judgment. And still, he hardened his heart. The truth is, ignoring the signs doesn't make them go away. It just makes the consequences louder. Let me ask you something. How many warnings does God have to give you before you listen? What has He been trying to strip away that you're still clinging to? That relationship, that habit, that hidden sin, that secret fear? Sometimes the reason we don't move isn't because we're confused. It's because we're afraid of what obedience will cost us. But what if the thing you're afraid to let go of is the very thing blocking your blessing? What if the reason you feel stuck is because you've been refusing to take the step you already know God told you to take? There's a verse in Jeremiah that hits like lightning. It says, "My people have committed two sins. They have forsaken me, the spring of living water, and have dug their own cisterns, broken cisterns that cannot hold water." Read that again. God is the fountain, the source, the living water, but instead we go digging pits in the ground, trying to make our own way, trying to hold together things that were never meant to last. Broken cisterns. That's what we end up with when we ignore God's direction. No matter how smart, how talented, how connected, how spiritual you are, if you're not drinking from the right source, you will always run dry. But here's the good news. You don't have to stay dry. You don't have to keep digging pits that leak. God's invitation hasn't changed. His presence still satisfies. His mercy still restores. And if you're feeling thirsty right now, not physically but spiritually, if something in you feels like it's been gasping for air, then maybe that's the sign you've been trying to avoid. Maybe this whole time, God has been leading you back to the well that never runs dry. All it takes is a moment of surrender, a whispered yes, a heart that dares to believe that even after the detour, you're still welcome home. Don't wait for another sign. This is already won. Think about the story of Balaam, a prophet, a man who knew the voice of God. Yet despite all his spiritual knowledge, he still tried to walk a path God had clearly closed. He was offered riches, influence, status. And even after God told him not to go, Balaam saddled his donkey anyway and set off in the direction of destruction. But what happened? Next is one of the strangest and most powerful moments in the Bible. God opened the mouth of Balaam's donkey. Yes, the donkey spoke. It saw what Balaam couldn't see, an angel standing in the road, sword drawn, ready to strike. Let that sink in. The prophet was blind to the danger. The donkey saw the truth, and God, in his mercy, used something unexpected, even foolish, to warn his servant before it was too late. Sometimes we expect God's warnings to come in lightning bolts and loud voices. But what if they come through interruptions, through delays, through something that frustrates us or forces us to stop? What if that failed relationship, that closed door, that job that didn't work out, was the donkey trying to stop you before you walked straight into disaster? How many times have you tried to push forward, even when the path kept fighting back? How many times has God sent donkeys into your life, inconvenient, frustrating, strange, only to protect you from something you couldn't see? God loves you too much to let you walk blindly into destruction. And when you keep ignoring the obvious, he'll start using the unusual. Because here's the truth, delayed obedience is still disobedience, and every step you take in rebellion brings you closer to a wall you were never meant to crash into. The longer you run from his voice, the louder he has to shout. The more you resist the signs, the more drastic they become. But still, he warns. Still, he waits. Still, he speaks. The real question is, are you listening? Are you humble enough to hear God even when the message doesn't come the way you expected? Are you willing to stop and reevaluate your path, even if it means giving up something you thought you wanted? Because here's what many forget. Balaam eventually reached the place he was headed, but he never got the blessing he thought would be waiting for him. It's possible to arrive at your destination and still miss your destiny. That's what happens when you follow your will instead of his. But you don't have to end like Balaam. You don't have to learn the hard way. The fact that you're still here, still breathing, still watching this video, that's proof that God is still reaching for you. He's been speaking through the word, through people, through divine interruptions, through messages like this one. And if there's even a sliver of conviction in your heart right now, if you feel the weight of these words pressing on you, that's not coincidence. That's the Holy Spirit. Don't brush it off. Don't scroll away. Don't harden your heart again. This might be your Balaam moment, your final warning before the sword comes down. Turn back before it's too late. Surrender the path you've been forcing. Ask God to open your eyes to what you've been blind to. Because once you do, you'll realize he was never trying to punish you. He was protecting you the whole time. You made it to the end. And that says something about you, something rare, something powerful. Most people click away. Most people ignore the signs. Most people run from the truth, but not you. You stayed. You listened. You opened your heart to what God might be saying. That makes you part of a small group, a chosen group. And if you've made it this far, I want you to comment this phrase right now. I saw the sign and I chose to listen. Write it below. Let me know you're one of the few who doesn't turn away when God speaks. Because trust me, I read every name, every comment, and I pray for those who walk with me until the final moment of these messages. Now take a moment and think back on what you just heard. From the silence of your soul, reflect. How many signs has God placed before you that you brushed aside? How many moments were actually mercy disguised as frustration? The reason this video reached you is because he's still calling your name. You are not forgotten. You are not too far gone. But here's what you need to understand. The next step is yours. Will you share this message? Will you be the voice that someone else has been needing to hear? Maybe your brother is walking a path of destruction. Maybe your friend is ignoring every warning. Maybe someone close to you is on the brink of giving up completely. And this video might be the voice that pulls them back. So don't keep it to yourself. Don't assume someone else will do it. Click share. Send it to someone specific. Don't just think about it, do it. Now let's talk about something deeper. Many people say they love God, but they stay silent when it matters. They consume the content, but never engage. They enjoy the message, but never support it. If That's you. It's time to make a decision. Subscribe, not just because it helps the channel, although it does, but because it's a declaration, a commitment, a step. When you subscribe, you're saying, I want more of this. I want to stay close to the voice of God. I want to keep growing, keep learning, keep waking up. Because here's the truth. Life will distract you. The world will pull you. The enemy will whisper lies to get you to forget what you felt in this video. But when you're connected to something consistent, something that feeds your soul week after week, you become unshakable. That's why I urge you from my heart. Don't just watch and walk away. Join this community. Be part of something real, something that might be the spiritual home you've been searching for. And if you're not subscribed yet, ask yourself, why? Are you afraid of commitment? Are you waiting for a sign? This is your sign. Don't let another moment slip away. And one more thing, you might not have a church. You might feel alone in your faith. But this place, these videos, this community, it's a space where the word is spoken and hearts are restored. Every like, every share, every comment is part of the ministry. You're not just a viewer, you're a messenger. Now, before we end, I want to give you a final invitation. Sit still. Let the music that's playing now carry you into a moment with God. Don't pause the video. Don't scroll to the next thing. Just breathe. Close your eyes if you can, and in this sacred silence, whisper your gratitude. Speak to the Lord. Confess, praise, ask, surrender. Let this be your altar right now. There's a presence that flows even through a screen, a peace that surpasses understanding. Let it wash over you. Stay until the very last note. Don't break the connection. Let the final moments of this video be a space where you and God meet in stillness. Thank you for walking this journey with me. We'll be here whenever you need to hear him again.